this is Richard from Spieleschreiber. I'm delighted to talk about my new game, Reshooter, which I'm currently developing. It's the greatest podcast, as you all know, so listen to it. You will be amazed.
Hey, it's the Scene World Podcast. Me, him, us, here again.
Nice.
Yeah, beautiful. We're experts at this now. In a minute, we're talking to Darren Melbourne about the A400 Mini.
That means he's our most returned guest 4 times.
With different products each time.
Exactly.
So we've had guests that have been on for the same thing, but he actually has had different things every time he's been on. So that's, guy's a machine. But first, before then, we've got news like we normally do.
Right. So the last time we mentioned that Embracer and stuff moved away from Russia and their investment company, and now they announced that the Embracer Group will actually split into 3 publicly traded companies. So each business trade will have their own separate company.
And they're called Asmodee Group, Coffee Stain and Friends, and Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends. What?
Exactly.
What
I was like,
what is that?
First, I was like, is it April 1st? And I know it's April 21st. So it's not an April's Day Fool joke or something.
What is that mess?
Yeah, I know.
What is that?
How could you put the most random names?
Coffee Stain and Friends?
Holy shit.
Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends? What? What? Embracer Group was a silly name, but at least I understood it. Like, because they just kind of gobbled up other companies. They're embracing all these other companies, you know, like an amoeba swallowing prey. But splitting it into Asmodee Group, which I don't know what Asmodee means. What does Asmodee means? Looking that up, Asmodee is a French publisher of board games. Okay.
Well, the Swedes, you know.
Yeah. Coffee Stain and Friends and Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends. Why just Middle Earth Enterprises? Why does it have to have and Friends? What is the Friends? What? I don't. Is there like a translation thing? Like maybe this is just the English translation and it's bad. Like it's a garbage translation, but this is what they're actually called. It's really called like Glorbenstorch or something.
No, the communication language is actually English, rather not Swedish. So you are mistaken here. It's not a translation. Yeah. That actually their English names. Yeah.
Well, I don't. So confused.
And on Facebook, they were like making memes out of it. Embracer Group.
Okay, here's what they are. Okay, Asmodee, a global leading tabletop games publisher and distributor with an extensive studio network and IP catalog. Okay. Then Coffee Stain and Friends, a diverse gaming entity with a dual focus on indie and single and double A premium and free-to-play games for PC, console, and mobile, with a high degree of recurring revenues. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And then Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends is a creative powerhouse in AAA games development and publishing for PC and console, as well as stewards of the Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider intellectual property. Okay, so it's the people that do the Lord of the Rings games. So, okay, Middle Earth Enterprises. All right. But still, I mean, your AAA, what AAA games are going to start with Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends?
I mean, they still have, you know, companies like THQ Nordic and so on that will be used as their publisher name. I mean, you will not have a game saying published by Middle Earth and Friends.
I mean, but that's what this is. It's a publisher and distributor.
Yeah, but still you have still
Middle-earth Enterprises is a AAA game development and publishing house for the PC and console, so they'll be in the front of games.
yeah, but still still they own a lot of other brands like or publishers like
Right.
THQ Nordic, for example.
Right, but I'm saying that
Or
some games are going to have this stupid name on them.
yeah, probably. Or limited run games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The move has been made with the intention to unleash the full potential of each team and provide them with their own leadership and strategic direction. Direction right into the toilet. Good God.
I mean, honestly, what is the difference? I mean, do people feel now more empowered being not part of one big publisher anymore, but just
I imagine it's they
must have tax or financial reasons or whatever.
They're going to be separate publicly listed companies. So I imagine there is some distinct equity stories for existing and new shareholders. It's a money thing.
Right.
Yeah, this will enable them to unlock value in the high-quality assets of Embracer Group following the successful completion of the restructuring program. So basically, it'll let people make money.
Right.
Although I don't know how much money Coffee Stain and Friends can make.
I mean, the good thing is having three companies, and that is what a lot of united what a lot of companies do that are part of one group, they can write invoices to each other.
Right.
You can actually invoice one company for services that the other company is buying from that company.
Middle-earth and Friends.
It's a sister company, for example.
Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends will be the home of critically acclaimed will be the home of critically acclaimed studios, including Crystal Dynamics, Dambuster Studios, Eidos Montreal, Flying Wild Hog Studios, Tripwire, Vertigo Games, Warhorse Studios, and 4A Games, among others. The IPs include Dead Island, Killing Floor, Kingdom Come Deliverance, The Lord of the Rings, Metro, and Tomb Raider. So, and then Coffee Stain and Friends include Coffee Stain, Ghost Ship, Tarsier, Tuxedo Labs, THQ Nordic, Amplifier Game Invest. The intellectual properties include Deep Rock Galactic, Goat Simulator, Satisfactory, Wreckfest, Teardown, Valheim, and over 200 other IPs. So THQ Nordic is now going to be published and owned by Coffee Stain and Friends.
Nice.
Which is funny because the Coffee Stain and Friends are the, they're like console and mobile stuff. I always thought of THQ Nordic as more of a AAA games place, but.
Well, THQ Nordic is a fusion of Nordic games from Sweden and THQ that used to do licensing games like SpongeBob on Game Boy Advance and stuff.
Yes, but they also
and THQ was so unsuccessful that they actually went bankrupt.
Right. But they've also, where are the THQ Nordic games? Okay, maybe I don't know any of these games, so maybe they are,
I mean, THQ Nordic has a lot of nice IPs. I mean, just recently they re-released Alone in the Dark, which is the mother or grandmother, how you see it, of Resident Evil.
Right.
And was one of those games that was big for pushing CD drives to the market.
Yeah.
Was released on the Amiga and on the PC. On
Spellforce,
CD.
Destroy All Humans, MX vs. ATV Legends, Superpower, Knights of Honor, Risen, SpongeBob, AEW Fight Forever. We reviewed that.
Yeah, it's still
That's
amazing that FIFA's it's not called FIFA Soccer anymore. It's now called FC, but still, and WWF games are the two genres that are like the last games of every console generation.
Yeah.
And of course those party music games like Guitar Hero or Pop Stars or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, it's like WWF seems to be super big wrestling in America. Amazing.
WWE, but yeah.
Oh, WWE, yeah, right. They changed the name a while ago, right?
If you want to watch stick figure created character me beat up Sting in some inexplicable way, we'll watch our review.
Yeah, it's actually quite nice in the game. You can actually modify the character so much that it actually resembles you.
Well, he didn't quite resemble me. I mean, he had like bear claw marks on him, but
I mean, but you could.
You
could. Yeah. I mean, you can see videos on YouTube where people were beating up Billy Mitchell and stuff.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I made someone of my height and weight that kind of had my generic type features, but yeah. But either way,
you can be very, very close to that actually. Yeah. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So other news. Cyberpunk 2077 mod for Opera GX has been released. So if you are an Opera GX browser user and you want your browser to look like Cyberpunk 2077, install this free mod. If that is the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never used Opera GX. I think I used to have it. I don't think I have it anymore. I don't think I have Opera here anymore.
Yeah, I switched to Vivaldi a while ago because of their mail browser.
I still got Opera. I just never use it. I've got freaking every browser known to man on here. I got two.
Anyway,
Firefox.
We have stuff from Nickelodeon news. A new announcement of a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Wrath of the Mutants. And it's from the newer shows. Right. So not really my generation. And
is it a show?
It's actually a re-experience of the 2017 arcade classic with three additional stages and 6 additional boss battles.
Okay.
Take control of Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael in this classic beat 'em up inspired by the cult favorite Turtles in Time. Play with your friend through local co-op and dominate the Foot Clan to foil the Shredder's maniacal plan. Yeah.
Maniacal, yes. Ooh. I like that that reboot of the old Turtles games that came out. That we I think, did we talk to them?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
I had to annoy the hell of the French publisher to make this interview happen. So
it's a good game. I actually play that game. It's actually a really good game.
Yeah, I did beat it with a friend recently.
Oh,
so I played through the game actually, yeah, which I normally never do. I never finish games. So.
I haven't done that much, but I have played it. So
yeah, nice. So anyway, the newer cartoons, but no, they were actually on Steam. Oh God, sorry.
Right there.
Get
a lozenge.
On Steam. I don't know why. Um, hmm, probably should clean my nose or something. Anyway,
Okay.
normally you are the person who
Yeah.
talks out of his nose.
Yeah.
Anyway, on Steam, people were in the forums because you can already put it on your wish list. People were like, the old arcade classic from '77 the people were like, the old release from 2017, the arcade classic was already shit, and I'm pretty sure this re-experience won't be any better. So right from the get-go, it will probably not be as successful as um, as the Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge.
Yeah. Well,
We will see about that, but obviously the people are not very excited about it already. And if you look in the video, it looks very, well, plasticky and, well, 3D render.
yeah.
If you are into that style, I'm not so much. So, you know,
Right.
CGI graphics, 3D CGI renders, not so much my thing. But anyway, they re-released the 2017 arcade release. So now you can play the arcade soon on your Switch or PC.
All right. Cool.
If you like to do if you like to do that.
If you like that sort of thing.
If you like to do that sort of thing, right? Yeah. Anyway, the game CTR, so Crash Team Racing, that is actually a racing game with Crash Bandicoot that never got released on the PC, is actually receiving an unofficial PC development port, which is already 70% complete and supports a 16:9 widescreen and 60 frames per second. So,
Okay.
as they announce it like that, they somehow must have gotten permission to do that.
All right.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, other news, Prince of Persia has been released for the VIC-20.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's got to be a thing.
Yeah. It's more looking like a Spectrum ZX game because it has color clash issues and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey, the water scoping movement is butter smooth like the original. So not bad.
They've done stuff on the VIC-20 that the VIC-20 just was never made to do.
Yeah, right. I mean, the VIC-20 has a very stable Doom release.
Yeah.
Unlike the Commodore 64, which is just a port of the code from the PC running on the Super CPU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The VIC-20 gets the love, but the C64 is still C64 is still the one machine that is the answer to does it run Doom is still no.
Well, there have been made several attempts, but there only are demos and no completed games.
Right.
And also there has been an announcement, and I actually tried it. Club Koala can be playtested now, and so I actually could request access via Steam, and I was instantly granted. And I have to say, the first impression was actually quite interesting. I was impressed by how well the world sucks you in, even as an adult, despite it's more aimed towards, well, not toddlers, but younger generation players. And so it's not bad. I was actually playing with something that was like a Fall Guys clone. Well, made some fun. Was not bad. Yeah, was pretty nice. Yeah. Well, and the last news I've got is that from Casebook 1899 that there will indeed day and night cycle, which is quite nice for a detective adventure game. Yeah, so that's all the news I've got, I guess.
Oh, okay. I got one here. It's so the Commander X16 is now sort of available, I guess. That's the computer that Dave Murray designed with some other people.
8-bit guy, 8-bit guy,
Yeah,
8-bit guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he designed this machine as kind of like his dream machine.
Yeah, I know.
Some other people added some ideas to it, and now it's available. You can order it. And several network serial and MIDI cards are being developed for it. There is a serial card that uses an ESP32 module. There's one that has MIDI. There's one that there's a MIDI wavetable one, and then there's someone else is working on a networking card that has everything. So that's RS-232, MIDI in and out, and Ethernet.
Ooh.
So there's some things in the works for this. I mean, I'm looking at least 4 here.
Nice. And what's the price point?
There is no price point yet. They're still in prototyping phase, I imagine. So I guess once these are released, then we'll hear more about that. But right now, they're being developed.
Nice.
So yeah, so things are being made for it, which that's pretty good. I mean, it's again one of those machines that I have the same feeling about that as I have towards like the Mega 65, in that like it's a cool machine. I really want one. No idea what I would do with it. Because there's no established software library or no hardware hardware library built up for it either. That you would have for like the 664 that's been around forever, and people have made lots of things for it.
And still doing them, yeah.
Right. But the Mega 65, I don't see much being developed for it. It's a thing that people are getting, and it's just kind of okay. I'll play around with it, but that's it. Or they'll do proof of concepts to show something can be done. Whereas the X16, people are actually developing hardware and software for it, which that's pretty nifty. That makes it a bit more of a, I don't know if I would call it like a not
establishment.
Right. Well, yeah, like an established kind of professional-esque, like real machine. Less of a hobbyist thing and more of an actual thing. But yeah, we'll put links to where you can check out those things, and I guess keep an eye on them for when they come out.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
So let's head over to the UK and hear Andrew, who's joining us, and AJ and me, all three of us.
Yep.
Asking Darren Melbourne delicate questions about the Atari 400 Mini.
Yes, indeed.
Bye-bye. Hey, so welcome back for the third time.
Yeah.
Already.
Well, I would say the third time. I think there'll probably be 1 or 2 more after this as well. But today we're here to talk about the Atari.
Awesome. Yeah, well, yes, you are now officially our most returning guest to the podcast in this way.
Massively honored. Thank you.
Awesome. Well,
you usually know me from Commodore-based machines, so this is a massive departure for me.
Yeah.
That's actually true. That's actually true. I don't know if you know Andrew yet. He is actually our gaming expert in the staff.
Andrew, hi. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi.
You probably heard of him already. He's a celebrity. I mean, he has thousands of Twitter followers, and he made books and stuff about the topic. So
yeah,
awesome.
I can see we're going to get on well, Andrew.
We've been in contact a couple of times through Retro Games.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you already knew each other, probably. Awesome. Well, so Darren, let's talk a bit about how did it happen? You actually went from Amiga and Commodore to the enemy Atari, you know, the rival.
That is so, it's so true as well. Atari wasn't our only rival at Commodore. It was Spectrum and the Ataris, and I think I've spoken about this previously. I think each of the machines held an intrinsic value in the playground. The Atari, of course, had the colors, because it was a fantastically graphically superb machine for the time. And much as I hate myself for saying this, the 64's color palette couldn't really stand up to the Atari. And then I was telling my friend this. I used to go to a computer club where I'd take my C64, or there'd be about maybe 30 users of C64s, 30 users of Atari, and then the others were random Dragon 32, Spectrums, and Oryx. And it was really the Atari and the Commodore that always had the showdown to see who had the best versions. And we used to love comparing things like Ball Blazer on both machines or Rescue on Fractalis on both machines. So I think the Atari was always there on the periphery for me. Now I hung my hat on Commodore, loved the Commodore machines, absolutely. But secretly, I always kind of envied the guys with the Atari, because I really loved those machines as well. I just couldn't own up to it. They also had some really cool games that we didn't have, you know, and things like, as much as it pains me to say, Ball Blazer on the Atari was incredible. That was one of my favorite games. And Rescue on Fractalis, Atari was the first game ever to produce a proper jump scare.
Yes, yeah. There's a fascinating little Easter egg in that jump scare. If you look at the Aliens T-shirt as it jumps up, its uniform as it jumps up, you can actually see the initials of the team involved, including David Fox. So just have a look at that next time. It looks like alien writing because it's turned on its side. Okay. If you look closely, you can actually see it's the initials of the team involved. So fun little Easter egg.
I can check that in the next half an hour to an hour.
You know, that is why we have him in the call. He knows all all the little details.
And another little interesting thing on that, Industrial Light and Magic obviously was part of Lucas Pictures, and they actually built a mock-up of the Starfighter cockpit, which they then took a picture of for the front cover of the computer game box. So
okay, actually, I love the front cover of that as well. Makes sense. Andrew, we need to pick this up and discuss things for many hours.
I'm sure we could, but I think we'll focus back on to why we're here tonight. And so, was there a big reason behind choosing the Atari 8-bit computer next? Was there one particular thing that you homed in on it?
There was, if I'm being honest, and I'm going to put that squarely at the front door of Wade Rosen, the new CEO of Atari. I think Wade and I first connected when he was still just a shareholder at Atari, and I believe he then became the chairman. We connected, we hit it off. I would say we became firm friends. We were always looking at the Atari machines. They were always something that was on our horizon, on our schedule. But I would say the Atari probably forward in our planning, mainly because of our relationship that myself and the rest of the guys then formed with Wade. Just because he's so passionate about gaming, he's not one of these CEOs who's taken over just to make money. I mean, I'm sure that's an element, but he is so focused on retro games, retro hardware, and what Atari stands for and what Atari was, and recreating it, that it was a logical step for us to try and help him with his dream and with his goal of getting Atari back to where it should be.
It's good to hear that Atari's involved in it. And so how much help did you get from them as you were working through this project?
To be fair, they've been there since the beginning. They've been invaluable to us. They've been exceptionally helpful, and I think they will continue to be helpful throughout our relationship. They've been very supportive. They love what we've done. I actually was with Wade last week in San Francisco. We're out at GDC. I met him for breakfast, and we were just talking about the 400 and how pleased he was, and also the 2600, obviously from PlayOn, and just how pleased he was with the products and the direction we were taking and PlayOn were taking as well.
So in a way, these are actually kind of like actual Atari machines because they've been so involved.
They literally, they have been intrinsic since the beginning. I mean, they're not one of these partners who's fire and forget. They don't just sign a contract and walk away and leave you to it. They've been absolutely insistent that they've been with us throughout this process.
I have a few questions because it's one of the rare times where we actually interview you before the game is not the game, but the machine is actually released, because it's actually releasing on the 28th, and at this time we have the 25th of March. And I have a few questions because I was reading the homepage, and I'm a sucker for details. So because I complained a lot about the C64 Mini, and I sent you SMS about it.
Yeah.
You probably remember that.
I do.
So I actually read on the homepage that for once, I think you have a little error there, because it's mentioning one of the games called Lee. But I guess you mean the game Bruce Lee. Could that be?
I couldn't possibly comment if it has anything to do with that game whatsoever. It might look very similar though.
So you might have a spelling error there, because it's exactly at the wrapping point of the next line. So I guess somebody accidentally deleted the word Bruce. And also something I noticed, because last Saturday I was actually at a gaming evening of an Atari freak here in Germany, and he was bragging about how great the aftermarket joysticks are that you currently get. And I was actually playing one, and it was a lot less stiff than the original Atari sticks. So I wonder, the Atari stick that you actually promote and you can pre-order on all the stores, is that the same one that is already out, or did you do your own recreation, or cannot you comment on that?
Yeah, no, we've built our own. We needed the 8-button configuration, so we've got 8 buttons built into ours.
But yeah, I mean, that's true. But the mechanics itself is not borrowed from what is already there from the aftermarket.
No, it's similar. It's similar, of course, because you can't. I guess you can't move too far away from the original and the one that's been done recently. But it is our own. It's our own creation.
Because you know how the community is. People will compare. That's the first thing they will do once the joystick is out, and everybody will pick their favorite. And is that something you worry about?
We've had so much stick over the joysticks. It's unbelievable. We seem to keep 50% of the people happy all of the time, and 50% of the people are never going to be happy.
Okay.
We do our best. Obviously, we do our best with everyone we do. We acknowledge there were some issues with the one that came packaged with the original Mini. There were, and every time we create a new one, we refine it. We do as much testing of that unit as we can, and we try and spend as much time as we can to perfect it. I would say every iteration we put out, we'll amend it in some way to try and make it better and better and better every time. Because
the difference this time is we actually have a valid competition this time.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the original, we've got the 2600 plus one. I'm sure there are other ones out there and ours. So yeah, there's plenty we can be judged against.
Because when the C64 Mini was actually released, Jens Schönfeld stopped his limited run edition at that time for his recreation of the joystick. So you actually were lucky over there, and that you came in this perfect moment where there was no competition from the retro market for the joystick. Anyway, it's something I had to ask, because
ours does something very different in the way that the buttons are configured as well. It does something very different. I hope people like the way we've put it together. Chris Smith, our CTO, worked long and hard on the design of that joystick. So hopefully you guys like it.
Awesome. And also you mentioned a lot, and that's something I think you didn't in the past. You mentioned a lot the software features, like a rewind up to 30 seconds to help those punishingly difficult classics.
They, you know what? I was discussing that with someone last week at GDC. Games back then obviously were based on arcade games. Now, arcade games were there to give you 2 or 3 minutes entertainment per quarter. All home video games or home computer games at that time were based on a very similar arc. Now, since then, learned how to make games play in a much more forgiving and user-friendly fashion. But back then, you're right, they were tough. You know, one of the games on there obviously is Bandits, which I absolutely love. Game. If I could have had 30 seconds rewind when I was playing it back in the 80s, I would have been a very happy person.
Yeah, you wouldn't have lost as many fruit then.
Awesome. And also, perhaps one last thing I noticed, you mentioned in the list Millipede, which is the successor of Centipede, but not Centipede itself. Was that a licensing issue?
No. Do you know what? It was very deliberate, and I think it came down to the fact that we preferred Millipede.
Oh.
And it's as simple as that. And again, I hark back again. I was playing Millipede, the arcade machine, only 3 days ago.
Okay, but that were all my questions. Andrew, you have the stage.
Yes, so I mean, obviously mentioning League and licensing games, that's part of what your main task is on this. How difficult was it to track down some of these licenses?
It's always tough. You know, there are some that we've got a straight route. The Atari ones, for example, are far easier. I think, for example, the serious titles, if we take them as probably best case scenario, were created in between 1980 and 1983. They created a whole host of titles, unpicking who owns them, where they reside, where Jerry Jewell, the former CEO, sits, getting people talking to you, starting a dialogue, then managing to negotiate something where people are rightfully cautious. These titles are 40 odd years old. Even they're not sure where the paperwork is anymore, and just trying to construct something that works for everyone. It takes a lot of time. You know, we're not one of these people we're not one of these cheap knockoff products that just goes and fills it full of content and puts it out there. We work really hard to work with the original authors. You know, we're quite proud that we always try and we say this. We try and pay everyone in the value chain. We try and make sure everyone that's a creator, whether that be hardware, whether it be software, whether it be games, whatever. We try and make sure that we at least pay who we should be paying, and we try and do everything as correctly as we possibly can. But anytime you're licensing games that are 40 plus years old or even 30 plus years old, it's hard work.
Yeah, because I mean, there's so many company takeovers, mergers, closures, bankruptcies.
Exactly so.
That trial, it must be difficult. I mean, I've heard stories from various creators who've been trying to make either a remake or a new version of a classic game. They've gone to some of the big companies and they said, "Oh, you hold the rights to," and this company says, "No, hang on a minute, we don't know anything about that game." And yet, because of merger, they hold.
Andrew, that's rightfully true. I would say in those cases that the original authors have got a fair argument. They're used to just go ahead and do it. And the reason I say that, and I'm not advocating that as go ahead and pirate a game that somebody's paid for, but you're absolutely right. If you're dealing with some of these big conglomerates, for example, where an organization's been subsumed 40 odd years ago, I don't know where the paperwork is. No one who works in the organization today, I would say there's very little chance that anybody will even know it exists. And after a certain amount of time, the copyright laws extend further than 40 years, clearly. But if you are recreating a game that you created, no existing trademark, and no one's used it for 40 years, you'll be fairly safe. I mean, what we would advocate in that case, I would set aside a royalty rate perhaps that you would have given to the question if they were indeed the owner. Charity. Stick it in an escrow account for a couple of years. If anybody comes forward, obviously then make a payment. If not, give it to charity. That's a fair way of doing it. There's so many games out there that are incredible that deserve remakes, and because of this weird legality and this weird convoluted issue of copyrights and trademarks, they never see the light of day again. So I think, you know, any way that this can be encouraged, because we shouldn't forget these games. You know, that's one of the big things that that we set up for was not to forget these systems and not to forget these games. The only reason my children have played a lot of the games they have is because we've created the 64 and the Amiga and now the 400.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I bought all the past machines, and I was totally fine with the DTV, the Z64 Mini, and also the VIC-20. But I was really disappointed when I got the A500 Mini, which is actually the Amiga. And I remember I was talking to AJ. I was like, most of those games I already have on the PC or on the C64 and are actually better versions than the games you actually put there. So I guess there you had the biggest licensing issues, because I thought it's a missed opportunity, because there are so many great games exclusively on the Amiga, and I was hoping for those, you know.
I think you've got more of a problem with a machine like the Amiga. It's more contemporary. Right. A lot of the big titles that were created for the Amiga have had sequels. They've had direct updates. I would say that companies that now own the biggest franchises found in one form or another. And you know, I'm not calling out anyone in specific here. You can read between the lines, but maybe they're not particularly eager to license this content out right now. That's the politest way of putting it.
And also, a lot of the games that people do remember from when they were younger, for example, Batman the movie, The Untouchables, RoboCop,
absolutely
have the added layer then of being a license from a film or TV or whatever. So that adds a whole nother set of companies to deal with into that equation.
You make a very valid point. Obviously, when then you're dealing with a second set of rights holders, and if they are particularly film industry in particular, they have a different set of licensing criteria. So the video game industry and the video game market has one set of payaways that it has to make, and one set of considerations. If I'm going to Warner Brothers to discuss Batman, I may as well add another 6-7 figures on top of that. And you know, that's we as a small company can't cover off a cost like that. So these games, unless there is a massive change in thinking, we'll never be able to license some of this content, sadly.
But interesting that you mentioned RoboCop. There's actually an exception there, because RoboCop actually had a sequel last year. RoboCop Rogue City, and it actually went to a small double A studio. It actually was a pretty good game. So at least for the RoboCop franchise, there is still interest in giving small developing studios a chance to, you know, to deal with the franchise.
And plus, when you've got games that are under license, I mean, that really comes down to the bring your own kind of ability of these systems, which is really that's what I like the most about them, is the fact that you can bring your own stuff and play. You're not stuck with what's just included.
Of course, that's all legally obtained and legally owned content.
Right.
Yes.
Of course.
If again, if only there was a store where we could easily buy it, and I think people would if there was an easy access to it. I think that's true. Regarding RoboCop, let's just loop back on that. What I would say is you're absolutely correct. There was a remake, and it wasn't a massive studio that picked it up. However, I would say that focusing on only one product, if we'd shipped the A500 with only RoboCop on it, I could have paid considerably more than I could when it's one of 25, one of 30, one of 40, one of 50 titles. You know, we have a royalty pot that has to be split between everybody that features on the machine. It doesn't matter which company it is. It's basically equitable. It's split between everybody equally. So if I'm dealing with one product, obviously there's a much bigger budget than if I'm dealing with 25 or 30 products.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. You know.
And another angle on the sort of content, the game Yump is on the A400, and it's a game I really love on the Atari.
It's beautiful.
Is there the possibility of adding more homebrew games, more independent games to the firmware in future?
I think that's a great idea, and I would never rule that out. In fact, it's something we've been talking about quite a lot with the guys at PlayOn as well. And in fact, in fairness, I should call out the team at PlayOn, because alongside Atari, they've been equally invested in everything we do, and I think it's only fair that they get the credit they deserve, because they're an integral part of our team as well. So when I say we've been discussing with PlayOn, that's not just as a distribution partner, which of course they are, but they are absolutely involved every step of the way with this process with us. But yes, sorry to loop back and finish that and answer that the question you actually asked me. Yes, absolutely, we'd love to bring your games. Absolutely, we would love to have more content.
I will always love you for the fact that you patched the C64 Mini and the full version and the games, because when the systems were actually released, it totally disturbed me that the music started in the middle of the intro of all games. And I remember we were messaging about it on iMessage, and you were telling me it's too complicated to fix it. It might not happen. And then a year later, you wrote to me, okay, we fixed it with the latest firmware update. I was like, oh, he listened to me. So suddenly it was like, wow. Now it's not only fine for those people who want to remember the good old days, but also those who are nitpicking like me.
You know what? I think that's fair enough. I mean, we're exactly the same. We try and make these things perfect as we can. But again, we're always working against a deadline ourselves. So at least with a firmware upgrade, you have the ability to fix things that you maybe missed the first time round. So obviously, when people write in or people email or people just tell us how terrible we are, we do take it on board. We do listen, and whenever we can, we try and fix it.
Well, I mean, there was one firmware update on the C64 version that I really liked, because that had added the game Barnsley Badger, which has got my music in it. So thanks for that.
Barnsley Badger, my goodness me. I tell you, there's only a few people who remember that, but well done.
And also, I think you improved. I think you improved the joystick at some point, right? Because I remember the first revisions, there were people like making pictures of breaking the shaft or whatever, and
look, again, I think from our perspective, it was our first. We designed it. We knew what we wanted it to do. It's just under certain stress conditions, it wasn't holding up. So subsequently, in revisions, we extended the metal shaft inside the joystick. It's like a long metal screw on the inside of the unit. We made it longer. We strengthened it. Again, that's down to Chris just constantly tweaking everything. I think the C64 Mini is many years old now. He still tinkers with it. He still looks at the firmware. He still looks at the joystick design. He still looks at things he can make better. So every time we manufacture a new product, it's improved every time.
I have to admit, I never broke mine, so perhaps I was not aggressively playing.
When those first reports were coming in, I've been playing with it for several months before the product was released into the wild. I just couldn't work out what people were doing. I accept that some of them must have been weaker than others, but ours have always been fine. Still to this day, I've never broken one.
Yeah, well, you didn't. Luckily, you didn't put in Decathlon, the joystick killer.
Well, I've not only that. I think I was playing Hez. If you remember Hez games, I played Hez games with it. I played all of the Epix titles with it, and it's still in one piece, which is a miracle, I think.
In terms of the new hardware, has there been any sort of big upgrade in the actual internals of the A400? Is it have you gone for a bigger, faster processor or whatever in that terms?
I think Chris would be the man to answer that question. I think every product he reviews what's out there. We look at different chipsets, we look at different memory configurations, different board configurations, the different USB configurations. Every time it's new. I'd like to say we have an economy of scale, but we seem to be trying to create something better.
Well, that's a good ambition. I mean, obviously that also opens up the question: will there be in time a full-sized Atari 400?
Good question.
Is that the time? Are we running late, guys?
I guess to dodge that question.
Look, let's be honest. Never say never to anything. My friends at Atari ever do hear this, they'll be saying, "Well, just say yes." Obviously, just say yes. Look at the form of our company. Look at the way we tend to do things. We put the mini product out. We can then judge if there is a desire and a need for it in the marketplace. And
right,
if the consumers tell us they like it, if the consumers say they want it and it fits in our schedule, then sure, of course.
Yes, the roadmap seemed to hint that there was at least one more full-size product coming out soon. So we'll see what happens with that.
That's fair. Just keep watching.
I'm still wanting a handheld C64.
You know what? Again, our roadmap. I think we put a roadmap out, which was ambiguous, but we just wanted to let people know when we perceived from a time frame perspective when things were going to be released. With a fair wind, we will have another full-size machine out. Yeah, well, mini full-size, whatever this year, and the full-size Amiga next year.
Oh,
in the first quarter of next year. So we are, we're trying to ramp up production. We've increased our headcount by at least another couple of people, which it doesn't sound a lot, but it's a small company again. So we're just trying to move things forward in a sensible way. We don't want to run before we can walk, but I think we're getting better at these each time we do it. I think it's well, I'm going to get shot by Chris for saying this. It's an easier process every time. Unless of course you're Chris or any of the other members of the team who are putting the technical side, and they would just argue with me and say it gets harder every time. But from our perspective, we get used to doing it. We're probably quicker and more efficient at the licensing and the paper parts.
I mean, obviously, the last couple of years, there's been a lot of problems for all the companies dealing in tech with supply and parts. I mean, has that affected your company much?
I think we were quite fortunate. I think during the COVID time, we were manufacturing the full size and the VIC-20, and we did run into delays. We ran into parts and chip shortages and everything else, but it kind of worked itself through while we were designing the 400. So I think we were quite lucky in that regard. I'm not going to lie, costs have increased. They've still gone back down to a pre-COVID scale, but they're dropping and it's manageable. So yeah, I think we were really, really fortunate. We seem to have, through accident more than design, we seem to have managed to miss most of the problems that other people have had.
Speaking about a possible handheld C64, one thing, at least here in Germany, that is incredibly expensive are actually replacement screens and electronics for those handhelds. Like the Atari Lynx and the Sega Game Gear actually have the same kind of upgrade for the screen, and they are 250 euros per piece. And it was holy crap.
You probably know now why we don't have one.
So I wonder if a portable C64 is even possible from the production cost side, because it's like it's super incredible how expensive those things are.
Again, watch this space. I think there are opportunities. I mean, obviously, when you're buying it in a retail capacity, it's going to cost more. We would have the benefit again of scale. We wouldn't buy one or two or five. We'd have to buy in the thousands. So obviously, we can negotiate a far better price. And I think just it's on the drawing board. It's not something we've discounted. It's something, again, if I thought or we thought that there was a consumer need or desire, I'm sure we'd go ahead and look at doing one.
So
I mean, you still have the mock-ups on the Indiegogo, right?
We do.
So
yeah, I mean, again, it came down to it wasn't the machine that people wanted more than a full size, so that took precedent.
Sorry for interrupting you,
No.
Andrew.
That's okay. Yeah. So if there was a sort of a dream product, the one machine you wanted to bring to market, what would it be?
That was, for me, it was the full-size C64. That was my passion. My dream machine was done. I mean, that's this journey started. I think I've said this previously. The journey started with a desire to bring the C64 back. Luckily, the company has continued, and we've expanded our remit, and I've got excited about a whole range of computers and consoles that I haven't seen in years all over again. And I think we'll just keep going. But for me, C64. For other members of the team, the answer would be different. Lucky for you guys, you've only got me. So if you have, I can't answer for them.
Right.
I mean, you know what some of their backgrounds are, so you can probably extrapolate from that what their dream machines would be.
Amiga CD.
Oh, God.
I'm not sure that's quite up there yet.
or I could even make it more obscure, the C64 game system.
Well, yeah.
With working cartridges.
Yeah, that's a bit too obscure for everyone. You know what? It sounds bizarre to say it, but look at how well something like the 2600 Plus has done. Takes original cartridges and new game content.
Yes.
Or look at, I would say our competitor. I would say our fellow British hardware company, which is the guys over at Blaze who make the Evercade. They've done really, really well with a cartridge-based machine. Again, I'm in awe of what they're doing. I love their ethos as well, and the way they put their machine together. The fact they constantly strive the same as we do. They try and reinvent and try and do something different every time. So I think, never say never. I mean, we laugh that off, but maybe an opportunity for cartridge-based systems in the future. I can't say for sure one way or the other. Either that, or there's already a company doing it, so we might just work with those guys.
That's interesting because, I mean, obviously you've mentioned the C64 DTV a couple of times. Going back to that sort of time, 2004, 2005, there were several of those sort of plug and play joysticks around at the time. There was one product, I don't know if everyone will remember, it was the Capcom plug and play. Yes. They actually had a key system. So you could buy the base system and then you could buy extra keys with more games on them. And so in a similar sort of way, is that something that Retro Games might look at? And could it help with the licensing issue in that if you go to the company and say, right, we're going to put your games on this key, on this cartridge, would you license more than one to us? You'd get all the royalties due on that, and you stick it in the system, and that would be a way of helping both sides.
I think. Okay, so I think that one of the differences is back in 2004, 2005, content wasn't as easily available, and I think back then as well, it was considered it was a very techie enterprise to get, for example, to get MAME up and running and to make sure that everything ran smoothly on your chosen hardware platform. To locate the ROMs in the first place, it was quite clunky. It was quite awkward to do. In fact, USB keys weren't as readily available. They were a fairly new thing back then. I think now the issue we have is pretty much without exception, you can access almost every game that's ever been written on a C64 and download it onto a USB key. So
legally.
Getting people to buy these things is problematic. So I think there's a perception, which is it's annoying, and it's also not real, but it's a perception that any game that's out there that's over 30 years old must be free. The concept of abandonware is one of the most ones, but also one of the most misused ones, because it's a concept, but it isn't a real thing. Abandonware doesn't exist. Right. And people just say, oh, don't worry about that, it's abandonware, so we can use it freely. Technically true. Just because someone isn't coming after you and it's not necessarily commercially available doesn't mean it's not owned by someone.
True.
All of that said, I still think it would be difficult to get people to pay for things that have been around for 30 or 40 years. For us, anyway.
But there are exceptions, especially GOG is having actually a business based on that, and also in some cases even Steam is successful with that. It's just like,
absolutely.
If it's cheap enough, people will say, okay, why should I spend the time putting up DOSBox when I can get the game for $5? $3.
Do you know what? And I fully support that. I love that fact. You know, I think that the more games that are hosted in this way on Steam and on GOG and are made officially available, it's fantastic. I think Paul Andrews, one of the co-founders of Retro Games, he runs a fantastic business doing that. So he takes retro games, he legally obtains the licenses, he puts them up onto Steam, he does a revenue share with the publisher. Fantastic, and long may it last. You know, the more he can do, the better. You're right. There is access to that, but again, it's a different experience slightly. It's not playing it on the original hardware. It's playing it on a PC or a modern console. So or on a Switch, for example. So if I want to go out and play Barnsley Badger, for example, on a Switch, the only way I can do it is by legally obtaining it. I think for far too long, people have been used to being able just to run an emulator or run MAME, and that just makes that market slightly more problematic. But again, I think in the same way that music was legitimized by, I guess, Apple after Napster, hopefully at some point the same thing will run through of software.
And for me, that's the difference with the Evercade, which I'm a big fan of, and the mini consoles that Retro Games have been putting out, because of the care that's gone into them and the official licensing. You feel like you're buying a legitimate product. Yes, you could quite easily buy one of these cheap Chinese handhelds, thousands of ROMs on them, but you don't know what you're getting. And even then, as you say, there's still technical issues. It might not run properly. You might end up with hundreds of thousands of ROMs you can't actually play because it's not configured well. And so, Evercade plug and play, the carousel on the minis, perfect way of accessing them.
Thank you. I think that's kind of you to say, and we've worked hard to make sure that's the case. What I would say is that you just mentioned about the Chinese knockoffs. That's endemic of a much larger problem. For me, I'm still mystified as to why in most countries it is a crime to handle stolen goods, yet Amazon and other online retailers are allowed to sell these things. Yet everything about them is illegal. They don't have safety. They don't have any kind of safety certification. They don't have any PEGI or USK or other such ratings. IP on it's stolen. Operating systems are stolen, and they're not held to account for anything that they are serving to the consumer. If the machine bursts into flames, nobody's held to account. If there's 18 plus content, children are given these things as presents. You've got no idea what's on it whatsoever. Evercade, Retro Games, and the people who try and do this legitimately, there's a process we have to go through. There's a process we have to follow. There are certain rules we have to adhere to. None of those guys have to do these things. So again, for them, it's a much easier route to market. They don't have to go to Warner Brothers plus the guys who made the original game for Batman or Paramount for RoboCop. They just stick it on there.
So that does bring up another issue. Obviously, you have to go through the certification and the age rating for all the content on this console. What kind of a process was that like this time?
It's okay, and I can say it's okay because Paul handles it, so I don't have to handle it. Okay. Again, if you had Paul on the call or Stuart Playon on the call, it would be a very different conversation. I think it's usually it's pretty laborious. I think only because you have to make videos and you have to do documentation and everything else. I think it's relatively straightforward. It's just like most of these things. It's just laborious.
Awesome.
And that also then could affect whether you have any sort of hidden Easter eggs or little extras on the machine. Is there anything like that on the A400?
A bit fuzzy then. I didn't quite get that question.
He's starting another one there.
Awesome.
He just put me the mobile and these earphone things. I can't get.
He just pushed down to duck that one.
Yeah, well, so speaking of quality, you could put a sticker on it. The best mini we ever had in production, right? Because you said you're always improving from the first one to the next one.
I've said that to everybody that's asked. As much as it pains me to say it, I think it's the best one we've done yet. Which means now we're going to have to go back and retrofit everything to make sure they get better. No, I really do. I think the team have really pulled out all of the stops for this. I think it's personally, I love it. I've had experience of it for quite a while now. I've been playing it for quite a while now. I think it's fantastic. And do you know what I'm going to say now as a personal favorite? Being able to bring Mule back to people who have never experienced Mule before.
That's a classic.
Absolutely. Who don't understand the cultural significance of Mule.
Absolutely.
It looks very basic, and people look at it and think, "Oh, what's that?" And realize it was gender defining. It was incredible. Got the most annoyingly catchy music of all time.
Yeah, we should pay tribute to Danielle Bunton for that game.
Absolutely.
Fantastic game, brilliantly done. I mean, she obviously also went on to do Heart of Africa as well.
Absolutely.
And it's a sad loss to the industry that she died young. But yes, Mule is a fantastic game. Just celebrated its 40th anniversary. There is actually on itch.io now. There is a new Mule online, which has been done with the collaboration of Ozark Softscape. So that's something to look out for if you're a fan.
I am. It was the game I was probably determined to have on the platform.
Awesome.
That's good.
I mean, there were some others I was determined to get on the platform, which sadly didn't make it. But that's not for want of trying. That's mainly because of there were just too many hoops and hurdles that were in our way to do it. But getting Mule was massive for us and important for us as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super interesting because this time you don't mention too much of the games. So I guess there are some surprise classics waiting for us.
Oh.
Well, only a couple of days to go.
Mystery.
Yeah. Awesome.
And obviously, Mule is one of the games where we do know the company that's still around, because obviously that's Electronic Arts, and they're still around. And we've got Boulder Dash on there from First Star, who is still around, still making Boulder Dash games. So there's quite a long legacy from the original Atari 400 through to the industry today. And it's great to have this new product to celebrate some of those games again.
Yeah.
Again, let's take Mule for example. EA were exceptionally magnanimous in their early days. Obviously, Electronic Arts was Electronic Artists. They set up with a view to giving the power back to the artists themselves. So luckily, that meant it didn't get caught in a big corporate machine. The ownership resided with Danielle Bunton, and on her passing, obviously, the family, her children continued with her legacy. And again, it was a slow process. I think they had other people approach them previously and either come to much, or they didn't really want to pay any money, or they didn't want to really invest time to make sure that it was the best homage to the original as it could. It was a long process, but I think we're very fortunate that we had a good dialogue and a good communication, and eventually, I'm not going to say it was a quick process, but eventually we earned the necessary trust to be able to feature the game. And for us, that was one of the biggest ones that we were able to get onto the platform. We were really pleased when we got permission to do that.
And you also got Berserk, what, if I'm not mistaken, has speech synthesis in it, right?
It was incomplete, I believe, originally. So there's been quite a lot of tweaking to make that work. Yes, it did have speech synthesis. Yes.
You already knew what my question was aiming at.
Yeah, believe me, I know how much has gone into making sure that works, and it works beautifully. If you're a fan of Berserk, you're going to love it.
Yeah. You know me too well already as a customer.
We've been through these questions a few times. You always try and find a tricky one.
Yeah, I'm always nitpicking about compatibility and sounding right, looking right, feeling right. I'm this kind of person. Awesome. It's nice to hear you have this attention to detail in this product. There should be no complaints this time. So there should be.
There'll be droves. There always are. But you know what? Again, we'll listen to them. Those that we can rectify and change with firmware updates, of course we will.
Yeah.
That's something else I think we're quite proud of. For a small company, we always try and iterate. We always try and make firmware updates whenever we can. We're only a tiny team, but we always try and make time revising and updating the existing products, because we think they deserve it. If people have trusted us and they've gone and bought our products, then we'll keep updating them as long as we are practically able, we will update them.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, I just worry a bit, as Andrew mentioned, if you ever make a maxi version of the A400 Mini, the membrane keyboard might not get the biggest amount of fans.
Well, that's true, and as also I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I love the stylized look, by the way. So for the 400, for me, it was absolutely iconic, and that played a part in our decision-making process. It was so unique in its look. It was. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a striking machine. However, should there be a full-size one, probably likely to follow a different form factor.
All right.
I think the one thing
for you.
I think the one thing I would look for in that, if there was ever a full-sized one, would be having those 4 function keys working properly. So your system reset, select, option, pause. I think that would be a key feature for me that needed to be there, needed to be part of it.
A valid request, and I would also say that I would anticipate that kind of thing would be taken into consideration.
I noticed the power light is on the Mini on those keys.
I also want to point out, you've got, there are peripherals that go along with it. You've got the CX joystick, which is the classic Atari joystick, and it also, aside from just having a cool joystick, first I love this stuff altogether. I'm actually using on my computer this from the Amiga, from the A500 Mini. I love the tank mouse. Jürgen and I were talking about this yesterday. He's not a fan of the Amiga style
tank
mouse.
I always hate.
It's my favorite.
No, you see, I love
mouse.
it as well. I love the tank mouse.
Yeah, that's actually the mouse I'm using. But the CX stick, aside from just being the peripheral for this, it also has, you can play it left-handed or right-handed mode, which is a big one, because there is a video of a video game con that I went to in which I am playing Pac-Man, doing it left-handed and failing miserably and not understanding why I'm doing it badly, because I'm holding the stick upside down like an idiot. But this actually lets you do that for real and adjust, which is big for people like me that are goofy.
Also good questions. I mean, the Atari joysticks were actually one of the first, if not the first ones, that actually had a wireless version.
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be supported? Do you have a wireless?
I don't think they're wireless. The original Atari wireless joysticks were very good, from what I understand. But
actually, it's interesting because they made a second hardware version of those, improving.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it was actually the TI-99 had the first ever wireless.
Oh, okay.
But
thanks for correcting me.
It's very close in terms of time. It's literally a few months difference.
Right.
But I think it would surprise people to learn how many wireless controllers there were around.
And for how long ago? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and for the same token, there was a lot of early analog control sticks out there in the early 80s. And then it was sort of rediscovered again in the 90s, obviously with the N64 and the PlayStation DualShock. So I just show you my T-shirt here, which has got the history of controllers on there. Going from the Atari one at this end up here right to modern. So it's an interesting one. So analog controls are around a lot longer than people think. There's wireless the same, but would that be an optional extra in the future, perhaps, wireless controllers?
It's something we've looked at. I'm not going to commit to saying we will or we won't, but it's something we have looked at. We've considered it. At some point, it will be a transition. It would be a logical transition. All these old machines have wires and cables.
Yeah,
I think if we're going to go truly modern at some point, wireless will have to become a thing.
Yeah, I've seen some people reviewing the 2600 Plus saying, oh, it's got short cables, your joystick's plugged in close, you need to press buttons on the console to change games, restart and that sort of thing. So we're used to the wireless controllers a lot of the time now. So perhaps, it is a way that it could progress. But interesting.
And I will again, I will compliment the fact that this is not a short wire.
I personally hate really short wires. They drive me mad. So we.
Yeah, good length cables, good length cables,
exactly.
HDMI cable, the joystick and the mouse cables. Yeah, they've all been good lengths. So
yeah.
But we have to take into account that the DB9 extension cord cables became super expensive in the last years.
That's so true. Costs have not come down, as I said earlier on. Costs have not come down at all.
So wow, amazing. Yeah.
There are various options out there for connecting the old-fashioned DB9 joysticks to USB. Do you know if any of those will work with the new Atari Mini?
Well, yeah. I mean, prove me wrong, guys, but I do believe, I do believe they do.
There's one over there. I'll check it out myself when I get mine.
Awesome. Yeah. One thing would interest me, because it was an issue for, interestingly, American YouTubers with the Z64 Mini, that it would only run the PAL signal, and for some reason America has very small amount of PAL compatible TVs
in America. No, we don't. Yeah, we don't. In Europe, it's like monitors and TVs, they run either one. It doesn't matter. Here, it doesn't matter what it is.
1990.
Yeah, nothing runs PAL. It's only NTSC, and it's awful.
Yeah. So I wonder, will you make the new machine run on dual broadcast standards?
I didn't have an issue with that with the 64. The 64 Mini works fine for me.
It should run fine. Yeah, it should run fine.
Yeah. I mean, you were not an early adapter like those YouTubers, because the European models were first.
Right. A lot of people hopped on and bought the European models, and then we're like, hey, it's PAL, and like, what'd you expect?
It's European. What do you expect?
Right. Yeah. Right.
I've loved it recently with some of the new C64 homebrew games that have been coming out. They've said it's been optimized for PAL. You can play it on NTSC, but it'll go a bit faster.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you've just made a very valid point there as well. Some of the new software that comes out for these machines is still staggeringly good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Some of the best games I've seen are coming out now.
So now I totally missed the answer of the questions. So you said it should work fine. So you actually
it should work fine. Yes.
So it means you are no longer making different units for different markets?
It's dual compatibility.
Really? Wow. So I hit the mark here. Interesting. Okay.
Right answer now. Chris is going to kill me tomorrow.
I mean,
fingers crossed.
Go quick, we got to make it this.
I'm really hoping I got it right. But yeah, I believe it's
firmware update 1.001.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's not, we're fixing it tonight.
Just because.
So American YouTubers, you are safe.
Yeah.
We're calling this the Darren's podcast firmware.
Exactly. Yeah. Calling this the podcast where he got it all wrong. That's the one.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, from my side, we got it covered.
Well, guys, I was going to say, I shouldn't drop this in, but about new games, have you seen the Impossible Mission 3 sequel that Icon 64 are doing? Doesn't it look fantastic?
I am so looking forward to that one myself. Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, every time I see a new update, I'm over the moon with what the guys are doing. It looks so good. Absolutely
brilliant. And it's quite funny because one of the games they've just released, Har Harrigan, they just released the dual pack, Goodnight and Har Harrigan. Har Harrigan is a sort of sci-fi platformer, but you can very much see the influence of Impossible Mission on that game, from the animation of the main character to how it acts. Yeah, so it's almost like a practice run for what they're doing with Impossible Mission 3.
Honestly, those guys are prolific, and everything they put out, I love.
Yes, absolutely.
It's great.
Right. Yeah.
Long may it last.
Awesome.
Of course, if you can think of anything else, you're more than welcome to email, set up another call. When we discover that I've got everything wrong, we'll do it again. That kind of good stuff.
The feedback episode.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We'll plug it back in and see what happens. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an Atari expert, so I probably don't have so much to complain this time.
Yeah. Well, so what's next after? Because you guys, again, you're saying they're prolific. Your Retro Games is pretty prolific as well. Like, we've already got the 64, the VIC-20, the A500, now the A400. Like, are we looking at like an Altair Mini, or
Trash 80 Mini?
Yeah, a Heathkit Mini.
Being sensible, I think there's one or two platforms that we haven't touched yet. Between the lines, guys, or announcements will be made later on this year. To be fair, we were discussing this today. I think we will start releasing more information. I think May, June, July, that kind of time, and then later on in the year we'll do a full announce.
Oh, we don't.
I mean, you mentioned the Dragon 32. When I was interviewing Pecco Portello, I was actually learning that the Dragon 32 was very famous in Spain. So people from Spain would love you if you make a Dragon 32 Mini.
I've got some friends who would love me, who I grew up, they had the Dragon 32. So I used to go out to their place and play that, and I'd take my 64 round as well. So yeah, nothing's off the table. We are guided in a lot of ways by our consumers. If people want it, just let us know.
Andrew Braybrook, the programmer of Paradroid and Iridium, started with the Dragon 32. So.
Yeah. And the Dragon 32 with the game Boogaboo the Flea, actually the first game that had a cutscene.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. One of the first games from the Spanish games industry as well. So a very important game.
Exactly.
Paco, wasn't it? Paco Suarez.
Yep.
Exactly. Yes.
Again, I've been discussing that game in the last week and how much I loved it. In fact, we were discussing. It's auspicious you asked that. Actually, I'll mention that game. We were talking about it this morning, saying how much easier it would be with the 30-second rewind.
Absolutely, that game is suited for that rewind.
Yeah.
You got right to the top of the map, and then bang, or that thing that ate you, the plant that ate you. It was an incredible game. Very hard, but incredible. Yeah. I loved that game.
Yeah, I mean, if you imagine that it actually was just a game because they had a physics engine and somebody paid them to make a game around it, super incredible story. I don't know if you saw the interview I did with him, but in case you didn't, perhaps you should check it out.
And I'm going to go back and check it out. So I definitely will do that. In fact, I'll probably do that later tonight.
Because just for me, he hired a translator for this interview, and there's one funny part I want to mention. When we started talking about the Dragon 32, the translator stopped and was like, "Why are we talking about dragons now?"
Any idea what it was being spoken about?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, fun. All right. I mean, wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, we had an hour and a half nerding out about an unreleased console. Wow.
Well, definitely looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Indeed.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for hosting me again.
Yeah. So where can people go to find out about this?
Go to our homepage, retrogames.biz. They can go to PlayOn's homepage, or of course Atari.com.
Awesome.
Atari.com.
That's an easy one. That's beautiful.
That's one you can't forget, right?
Yeah.
It's great to see Atari back in the business and back doing some great things.
It sincerely is. They're not just badge slapping. They're trying to do as much as they can. They're trying to be involved and integral in these projects. And from our perspective, they're doing a great job.
And in terms of the history as well, a company with that much history and things like that, the Moby Games link up recently, I think that's been very important to help preserve the history. And devices like these minis do help preserve that history, do help move the conversation forward and say, look back and what the industry came from.
I think that's really important. Actually, funny enough, again, we were out at the Game Developers Conference last week and walking around looking, and sometimes staggers me that the industry that we started in the early 1980s, where you'd go to a Commodore or a Sinclair show and there would be a few hundred people, to now the biggest creative industry on earth, I'm still quite in awe of what's been created in the last 40, 45 years.
Yeah.
Glad to have been some small part of it as well.
Yes, yeah, I was going to say you've had an interesting view on it yourself.
And long may it last. We'll as I say, we'll continue to make the machines, continue making games, and continue working in this industry for as long as it'll have us.
Awesome. But at some point there will be no longer machines that you can make a mini out of, because
There'll always be machines you can make a mini.
There's always machines you can make a mini out of. Absolutely.
I mean, if Sony needs some help, you can show them how to make a PlayStation 2 mini. After the not successful.
If you had done it, it wouldn't have sucked.
Guys, I'm glad you said that and I didn't. I might have been thinking it, but I didn't say it.
Yeah. I mean, I got the classic because I knew it would fail and it would end up being rare. So I got one actually just for this little purpose, because I knew it's going to be a collective item.
I must get around to hacking mine. Get some more games on there.
Yeah. But I guess the most issue was actually not the hardware, but the little care they put in putting the wrong versions.
Again, the licensing issues, the taking the care with what version you're putting on there. As we've mentioned before, it's that's the difference.
Yeah, they really half-assed it.
But you would have hoped that a company of their size would be able to tread through the minefield easier than we can.
Right. And even if you don't get the right version for the right market, make at least the console playing it at the right speed with the right resolution and stuff. I mean there are Sony, they could have fixed it around, I mean building around the emulator or whatever they were using around the games they had the license gone for. Nobody would have argued then, because nobody would have looked into it. But the reason people were looking into it was actually because it played awfully, because it wasn't optimized in any way, shape, or form. You know, like, oh, it's Christmas soon. Let's quickly put something together.
Well, and therein lies the games industry.
Yeah, maybe there's a lesson there in preserving what you're doing now, so you can look back in the future and say, right, well, we did this, we did that, and getting it right. If we're going to move to a future of predominantly digital products, then we need to know that they work properly going forward.
Yeah, I mean, there will always be a problem. I mean, the latest example would be Alpha Protocol. We just spoke about it with AJ because we had another intro recording yesterday, and it was not on the market for 5 years because of licensing issue with the music, and Sega didn't care,
Well, even more a more up to date example would be the problems with the Star Wars Battlefront collection that's happening right now, which is not quite a remaster, not quite a remake, and in some cases is inferior to playing the original game through backwards compatibility.
I think we find this all the time, both as Retro Games. Obviously, sure, some of you know, with my other hat as the licensing director of Antstream, and we've licensed thousands of games and thousands of pieces of content, and we have the same challenge every single time. I think in years gone by, there was a little consideration for keeping records, paper records, code backup, graphics backup, music backup, sign-offs for music and art. In fact, there was no consideration whatsoever. So literally going through that process is always difficult. But again, I'll say again, the team at Antstream Arcade have worked tirelessly to make sure that these retro games are all licensed legally, all licensed correctly, best way possible, are as compatible with everything as possible. It's down to teams like Retro Games and Antstream and AUK and Evercade just to keep the memories alive and keep the games that we all grew up playing and loving, keep them alive and keep them valid.
And do you think your audience is more than just us 40-somethings who remember them? Do you think there is an audience of younger people out there trying them and enjoying them?
I think most definitely. I think it did with people our age buying the hardware, But for example, my 9-year-old son had never encountered Boulder Dash until the C64 Mini. Back then, he referred to it as the rock game, but he loves it, and he would probably have not experienced that if it weren't for the mini consoles. The same as they would never have experienced, well, they hadn't previously experienced, for example, R-Type. Then all of a sudden you can play Antstream Arcade on your Xbox, and now R-Type or Kickoff 2, for example, are firm favorites in our house. They're both games that are 30 years old.
Yeah, but Sensible Soccer's better.
Again, that's personal preference. It is personal preference because there are still some massive Kickoff 2 leagues still.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say this because I worked on copies of Kickoff and Kickoff 2, but we also, to be fair, we also produced the NES and Game Boy versions of Sensi Soccer as well. So I can stand with a foot in both camps.
Luckily, my interview with John Hare's already released. So
I saw John last week. He's still doing well and he's still working away.
What's actually your opinion about the latest Sociable Soccer 2024?
I like everything John does, to be fair. I think he was one of the people when we were making games in the 80s. When Whizball came out, I came very close to giving up and going home.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it briefly in the interview with John Hare, but he announced Sociable Soccer in 2016. EA and Konami was like, that's no competition for us. And look how now it's called FC 24 and
absolutely.
Now it's called eFootball instead of Pro Evolution Soccer, and those games are now the most hated football games in some communities because the eFootball release, which is now free to play on Konami, it totally didn't do well, and FC 24 of EA is also not a big seller. So they really messed up their soccer franchise, which is a surprise to me.
Well, FC24 is still a big seller, but it's not.
Yeah, but still, it's not the quality. It's not the quality they used to have. It's like.
Yeah. I think again with what John Hare does, he operates on a much smaller scale, and that's just purely a scale of economy. But even back in the Sensible Soccer days, they never went full 3D. They never went for realistic animations. They went for a game that played really, really well. And it gave you such a good experience as a result. Excuse me, guys. Experience as a result.
Yeah, I interviewed John at a retro show once, and he was talking about how the fact it was the control method came first. And the control of the game came first. That was more important than the graphics in many ways. Having decided on that top-down view, they wanted it to play fast. So everything was, all about getting the control, updating every frame. And then when they upgraded to Sensible World of Soccer, there's this huge back end with the database and all the menu system, but that central core is still the same playable football engine with new features. But they worked really hard to get everything right. And he's been doing the same with Sociable Soccer.
Absolutely.
That development is all about, right, it's got to play right. And we're going to have this fun added layer on the top. You play with friends, you play for your team, you play in your leagues. And so that makes it, that's what makes it sociable.
If you ever get the opportunity to play it with one of the virtual reality headsets that works with a mobile phone, it's fantastic. I know it sounds ridiculous. It's fantastic. It's like playing football in God mode. It's fantastic. It's because it's not a real world full 3D experience. There's no seasickness. There's none of the weird side effects. It's just you're looking down at your pitch. You can look everywhere. It's great. It's one of the best virtual games. It's so simple. It really, really works well.
I actually had because
how's about that for a segue? We've got
it is fascinating. How have we got here? How have we got
John Hare?
Who do you support, Darren? Who's your team?
The mighty Leeds United, of course.
Oh, boo.
Yeah, you.
Ipswich Town, going up.
Oh, really? Well, do you know
We're
what?
Going up.
I think you're to do the double. I think you're going to do it on the bounce. In fact, my good friend Chris is also an Ipswich fan, so we have this this good-hearted banter, especially as Leeds are currently top of the table, is all I'm saying. I know it's only goal difference at the moment, but you know what?
Ipswich have scored more goals than any team in the English football leagues.
I believe Leeds currently have the most consistent win record of any team in the Football League.
I'll give you that.
Sorry to you two guys now, and we
Okay.
shouldn't do this because we're in danger of boring everybody that's listening. I mean,
so we're going to talk.
Let's be honest.
Talk for hours about games. We're going to talk for hours about football.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But we'll have to pick this conversation up offline, especially towards the end of the season when we're battling it out.
Oh yes.
We had all kinds of conversations once. I mean, we went into politics for a bit with Rob Hubbard. So it was like, how did we end up here? You know?
That's a free-flowing interview for you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You need John Hare involved because this thing, then it'll just go off into all sorts of
everywhere.
directions.
Oh yes.
Absolutely.
Guys, so that means you will be coming back.
I'm gonna have to wrap it up soon, guys.
Yep.
Awesome. That means you will be coming back for the next mini machine.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Always glad to have you on. Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you so much as always. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for sitting with us.
Any more questions? Ping them across an email. I'll do my best, or just abuse me via iMessage or Facebook Messenger as always.
I try to be a nice customer this time.
Appreciate it, honestly. Well, look, guys, from the guys at Atari, PlayOn, and Retro Games, thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
Problem.
Thank you, Dan.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.